but we are capable of so much more. Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated.
26%. We already have a housing affordability problem.
None of this sounds any good to me. Sorry. And it's all self-inflicted, by the way. None of it needed to happen.
This is not a pandemic. This is not a financial crisis. This is something that we have created.
I think that all that we're going to see happening in the end times is a building of a confederation of 10 nations.
Going to have a recession in the United States.
As I said on Monday in a talk that I gave at the New York Economic Club, I think we're very close, if not in a recession now. We have to recalibrate. Yes, I do believe we're probably starting, if not, we're in a recession. Yes, I think the market is still underestimating how high inflation can get. If you factor in all the tariffs,
right?
You factor in all these other issues, it's going to be quite additive. I mean, I read in a report that if you just take the tariffs and the cost of home building, the average new home could be up as much as 26%. We already have a housing affordability problem.
None of this sounds any good to me. Sorry. And it's all self-inflicted, by the way. None of it needed to happen.
This is not a pandemic. This is not a financial crisis. This is something that we have created.
This is not a pandemic. This is not a financial crisis. This is something that we have created.
This is a post from a Chinese national saying, you guys are all blaming China, you're blaming us, but it's really your own fault, and America now needs a revolution.
They rob you blind, and you thank them for it. That's a tragedy. That's a scam. That's why I'm saying this right now. Americans, you don't need a terror. You need a revolution. For decades, your government and oligarchs ship your job to China. Not for diplomacy, not for peace, but to exploit cheap laborers. And in the process, they hollowed out your middle class, crushed your working class, and told you to be proud, while they sold your future for profit. And yes, China made money, but we used it to build roads, leave millions out of poverty, fund healthcare, raise living standard. We reinvested in our people. My family also benefited from it. What did your oligarchs do? They bought yachts, private jets, mansions with golf course driveways. They manipulate the market, dodge tax, and poured billions into endless wars. And you get stagnated wages, crippling healthcare costs, cheap dopamine, debt, and flagged wave probably made in China while they pick your pocket. For 40 years, both China and the United States benefit from the trade, the manufacturing, but only one of us use that wealth to build. This isn't China's fault. This is yours. You let this happen. You let the oligarchs feed you lies, while they made you fat, poor, and addicted. Now they blame China for mess they made. I don't think so. I don't think you need another tariff. You need to wake up. You need to take your country back. I think you need a revolution.
You need to wake up. You need to take your country back. I think you need a revolution.
The stuff that's going on around us today just doesn't make any sense. And as we go through this presentation, you'll start to realize why it doesn't make any sense. And that all of this is not by accident. That all of this misery and strife in the world today is actually by design. Why is the world divided like this? It is not by accident. All of this is by very meticulously planned action. It is all done by design through the control systems that run our world. All you got to do at all times is follow the money. You'll get to the top and discover the Rothschild banking empire and their cronies, the banking families, and what is often referred to as the royal political elite. These families that control the world did not suddenly come into power in the last 100 years. We are talking about thousands of years of royal bloodline control of the world. The Rothschilds and the other banking families pretty much own all the central banks of the world. This is a shock to the system. The central banks of the world, like the Federal Bank of America, the Bank of England, the South African Reserve Bank, the Reserve Bank of Australia, India, Brazil, all the central banks of all the countries of the world do not belong to the people. They are owned private entities that are controlled and owned by the Rothschild banking empire. And they set the norms, the rules, and the financial policies for the countries. And they lend money to the countries, the governments and the presidents and the prime ministers and the ruling parties of the different countries. And this is why we are constantly trapped in a cycle of debt, because the banks that print our money do not belong to its people.
Well, Black Mirror has returned with its highly anticipated 7th season, and its first episode has already left viewers depressed, as they are also impressed. The new series of Netflix's hit sci-fi anthology opens with an episode titled Common People. It stars Rashida Jones as a school teacher named Amanda, and it follows the tragic aftermath of her character finding out she has a life-threatening brain tumor. Now, we won't get into the weeds of the episode right here, but it's left many fans feeling bleak, and one ex-user warned, quote, "If you watch Black Mirror, don't start with Common People." Now, I have to say, there are a lot of episodes in Black Mirror that are depressing.
I agree. I did read the synopsis of this episode, so I do know what happens. I haven't seen the new season yet. I love Black Mirror, first of all.
I do too, yeah.
But it does seem a little bit like it would be hard to watch, but honestly, that's the whole series.
Yes,
so
it's hard to watch.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch, but it's also, you can't stop watching it, you know?
1,000%.
Yes.
It really makes you think. So,
Yeah,
just a warning.
I'm going to be diving into this one, I think, this
Yeah,
weekend.
I'm anxious to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
I mean, I think you can't entirely put the genie back in the bottle. I think that the tricky thing is going to be how it's used. It's a really powerful tool, in the same way that the tools in Photoshop are powerful tools. They're still useful if a human is ultimately operating them. But I think that's what we want to see as people. I think that you want to feel a human connection with what you're watching or reading or listening to. And I think if you're completely removing the creative human from that pipeline, then what have you got? You've got a product. You've got something that's just synthetic material, which I just don't think would fly. It's easy for me to say that. I've got a vested interest in saying that. Maybe I'll be out of work tomorrow and replaced by something that can type much quicker than me with metal fingers. But hopefully, bloody not.
With a new Gen 9 processor, increased temporal stability, and full spectrum memory curation, the solution to our challenges won't come from changing our world, but entering a new one. Nubbin, it's better in here.
Come with me to Disc for the very first time. I am terrified. I went to the Nubbin launch event last night. Yes, this thing is real. I did an unboxing last night on the train because I was so excited. But here it is. The Nubbin itself. It is terrifying to look at, and it's just something about it kind of freaks me out. It's terrifying. I saw a load of people using it last night, but I'm going to go for it. I think I'm going to put it on my right temple. Right, I think I've got to press this button, put the hands on my knees, and then say, enter game. Enter game. That's insane. It was like I was just back in school. It was like I could literally step through my own memories. Kind of makes your head hurt a bit though, but yeah, that was one of the coolest things I've ever done. I can see why people get used to this. I can see myself getting used to this. It's real. I had a go last night, but that was like a whole different thing. That was like it was literally calibrated to my own brain. Tucker and the nubbin, look, like the nubbin, Tucker, everything. Look, I'm all in. I'm all in.
Do you think it is likely that the United States will dip into a recession because of President Trump's tariff?
I think that right now we are at a decision-making point and very close to a recession. And I'm worried about something worse than a recession if this isn't handled well. A recession is 2 negative quarters of GDP, and whether it goes slightly there, we always have those things. We have something that's much more profound. We have a breaking down of the monetary order. We are going to change the monetary order because we cannot spend the amounts of money, so we have that problem. And when we talk about the dollar and we talk about tariffs, we have that. We are having profound changes in our domestic order, how ruling is existing, and we're having profound changes in the world order. Such times are very much like the 1930s. I've studied history, and this repeats over and over again. So if you take tariffs, if you take debt, if you take the rising power challenging the existing power, if you take those factors and look at the factors, those changes in the orders, the systems, are very, very disruptive. How that's handled could produce something that is much worse than a recession.
Top banks are predicting a recession in 2025, in this year. Billionaire Ray Dalio is predicting something worse than a recession. Now, Dalio, as you would know, is a hedge fund manager. He founded Bridgewater Associates in 1975. Today, it manages around $92 billion in assets. And Dalio feels something bad is coming, something worse than a recession, as he put it. What would that be? A breakdown of the current global order. He feels emerging powers will bring down the post-World War system, and this would create major conflicts. Basically, a breakdown in global relations. I know it sounds far-fetched, but Ray Dalio has a knack for this kind of things. He predicted the recession of 2008. And this time he says the US is very close to another one.
You're saying worse than a recession. You're saying this is reminiscent of the 1930s. We should tell our viewers you correctly predicted the 2008 financial crisis. What is your prediction for where the country is headed right now?
Right now we're at a juncture. The value of money. What is a storehold of wealth? That is a bond. In other words, one man's debt is another man's assets, bondholders. And so we're going to be in a situation where if that storehold of wealth is in jeopardy because there's too much supply and demand and so on, and we have a monetary inflation, we will have great disruptions. And that could be like the breakdown of the monetary system in 71. It could be like 2008. It's going to be very severe. I think it could be more severe than those if these other matters simultaneously occur. Imagine if we have a downturn politically and an international conflict.
And what's worst case scenario that you're warning of? To be very specific.
To be very specific. The value of money, internal conflict, that is not the normal democracy as we know it, and international conflict in a way that is highly disruptive to the world economy and could even be a military conflict, just as these breakdowns have occurred before. We have a new order that began in 1945, a new monetary order and a new geopolitical order. And these go in cycles that can be measured. And I worry about the breakdown of that kind of an order.
A new monetary order and a new geopolitical order. And these go in cycles that can be measured. And I worry about the breakdown of that kind of an order.
The
The Food and Drug Administration is no longer doing routine food inspections.
The Food and Drug Administration is no longer doing routine food inspections. The Food and Drug Administration is no longer doing routine food inspections.
The FDA's commissioner says some employees will come back next week to continue checks on risky foods like cheese, baby formula, and produce. These workers would be returning without pay. Other agencies like the Department of Agriculture and the CDC will still be doing their own inspections.
The Idaho Division of Public Health has a contract with the FDA to inspect about 70 facilities every year. These are food manufacturers and food producers. I'm told they will continue to be inspected despite the government shutdown because of that contract. But there are many more that won't be inspected. The FDA typically conducts roughly 160 routine inspections per week across the country. The agency is reportedly seeking to bring back enough workers to investigate high-risk facilities which deal with sensitive foods like seafood and cheese. But until all the food manufacturers and food producers are being checked again, Chief of the Bureau of Communicable Disease Prevention, Dr. Catherine Turner, says it's especially important we all practice food safety skills. She says the biggest concern is fresh produce, and that's because the inspections haven't been done for about a week already due to the holidays. Dr. Turner says those foods could already be in grocery stores.
Because fresh produce is so perishable and the turnover is so frequent on that, I think that's the area where I would be most vigilant in food safety. But right now, I think we need to be aware of what's going on, but it is certainly not a time to panic.
She does say, though, that if you are having digestive problems like vomiting and diarrhea, to see your doctor. Every year, 1 in 6 people contract a foodborne illness. 3,000 people die. And again, Dr. Turner says produce should be our biggest concern.
What is money really? Well, money is just an idea. It's a piece of paper. It's a tool of enslavement. And what you will learn here is that money is not something that evolved over thousands of years of bartering and trading as a tool that can help humanity prosper. No, it's exactly the opposite. Money was a tool of enslavement that was conjured up a long time ago and introduced as a complete and whole philosophy and a tool of enslavement. It's just a piece of paper that controls our lives. It burns and disappears. Where did money come from? How did money originate? Very few people are actually aware of this. Well, about 6,000 years ago, the first money appeared in the form of clay tablets. This is during the Sumerian Empire. Well, the Sumerian texts tell us about when money first appeared and also when the first royal bloodlines first appeared, and we find the emergence of the first kings, or the so-called first priest kings. And it just so happens that these first priest kings that appeared out of the blue on earth suddenly created all the banks, they created their temples, and in their temples they started to print these clay tablets, which became the first forms of money. So, in essence, the temples of these first kings that appeared on earth were the first banks from which the first forms of money were distributed to the people. And nothing has changed in thousands of years. This is really important. So, what if I told you that banks create money out of thin air? Would you be surprised? Well, that's exactly what happens. They have nothing. Money is absolutely useless. It is a piece of paper. It has no backing, and this is why it's called fiat currency, fiat money. It means nothing. It is valueless. It has no value. The only reason it has value is because we, the people, think it has value, and it's given to us as a piece of paper that has some sort of value, and we trade it and use it and go around and kill each other for it and rob banks for it and go to jail for it and do... It controls our lives from the first moment we are born to the last moment as we die. Money controls our lives.
It controls our lives from the first moment we are born to the last moment as we die. Money controls our lives.
This is something that we've created. As I said also on Monday, the United States post-World War II was a global stabilizer. We are the global destabilizer. Right.
No,
and that's a very... that's a very hard thing to say, because I pride ourselves of being, bringing the leadership, bringing the conversations.
Why is he backpedaling now? Mainly because of two reasons. The first is America's dependency on China, and the second is public backlash. we look at both these factors. Electronics is the biggest category of US imports from China. Your smartphones, your laptops, and computers, these make up 20% of the total imports from China. Imagine a 145% tariff on this trade. It would have made electronics unaffordable for Americans. Just consider the iPhone. The 16 Pro Max sells for $1,200. The tariffs would have increased that price by a lot, to almost $2,150 per phone. And why is that? Because China assembles almost 90% of all phones. It is basically a monopoly. Same with computers. China makes 81% of laptops and personal computers. So if you tariff China, all of this becomes more expensive, a lot more expensive. American tech companies would have raised the price of their products. We're talking about a visible and sharp hike here, and Trump cannot afford that right now.
Breaking news in the deaths of a Rochester doctor and his family killed in a plane crash.
We've learned the doctor was flying that plane. His colleagues remember his devotion to patients and the medical profession.
There's a real sense of grief and loss. We're very, heartbroken by this.
The sudden loss of Dr. Michael Groff, a leading neurosurgeon at Rochester Regional Health, killed along with his wife and family. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Malloy.
I'm Karen Edwards. That crash remains under investigation. The small plane crashing south of Albany in Columbia County.
Dr. Groff and his family were celebrating his daughter's birthday at the time. 13 WAM's Natalie Calzatoni met with a colleague and friend of Dr. Groff and brings us the latest on the investigation. Natalie, good evening.
Good evening. We spoke with a doctor at Rochester Regional Health who knew and worked with Dr. Michael Groff. He says Groff was a very accomplished surgeon, had a passion for flying, and his loss will be felt in many communities. The Rochester Regional Health community mourning the loss of one of their own, Dr. Michael Groff.
People's lives have been better because of him.
Groff was executive director of neurosciences at the health system and was among 6 people killed in a plane crash in Columbia County Saturday, including his family. Dr. Robert Mayo says Groff joined the team last July and will be greatly missed.
I think that the community knew him, and I knew him as an incredibly intelligent, caring person. And he used his talents to serve this community. And though it was a short time, it had a very significant impact, and certainly his much longer career in the Boston area served hundreds, if not thousands, of patients there.
According to the National Transportation Safety Board, the small passenger plane, a Mitsubishi MU-2B, was set to land at Columbia County Airport Saturday, but crashed roughly 10 miles south. Dr. Groff was piloting the aircraft. During a media briefing Monday, the board said investigators will be looking at photo and video evidence, weather data, and conducting interviews with air traffic controllers to try and determine the cause of the crash.
I did, Erica, and he tells me that the two were planning on getting engaged this summer. He tells me that every single person that was on that plane was extremely accomplished.
Tells me that every single person that was on that plane was extremely accomplished. Tells me that every single person that was on that plane was extremely accomplished.
While also being humble.
They're currently working on the extraction of the aircraft itself. We anticipate this will be concluded by tomorrow evening, at which point the wreckage will all be moved to a secure facility in Massachusetts.
NTSB investigators inspecting and extracting the wreckage of this small private plane carrying 6 people, including members of the Groff family of Weston and their 2 children's partners.
We pulled a number of pieces of equipment from the actual aircraft itself, and these are going to be the avionics that have been upgraded.
The NTSB says the plane took off from the airport in Norwood, then landed in White Plains, New York, before crashing in Copake, New York, just 10 miles short of its intended airport.
Now, what we can say is weather was, at that time, what we consider to be deteriorating.
Distinguished doctors, budding lawyers, NCAA stars, and an investment associate were on board heading to the Catskills to celebrate Passover and Corinna Groff's birthday.
She was like a superhero or something. I mean, it was sort of... It was almost like an exaggeration of a human being.
Corinna Jade Groff.
Corinna Groff graduated from Weston High School before going to MIT. That's where she met John Santoro's son, James, who was on the plane.
It was the light and the joy of our lives. He was determined to become a good man, and he succeeded.
James Santoro and Karenna Groff had been dating since their freshman year at MIT. He had plans to propose to her this summer.
We were just talking last week about when he could have an engagement party, based on her. She's had a busy schedule. She had some.
Officials say the plane involved in this crash was sold about a year ago. They say it was certified with the FAA, but they are currently pulling its maintenance records. A preliminary report is expected to come out within the next 30 days.
You have been in this field for more than 50 years. It's worth pointing out to our viewers, I think it's important to note you consider yourself to be apolitical, and you say that the tariff problem is a symptom of a much greater problem. What do you mean by that?
There are basically 5 big forces through history that drive everything. First, there's the money, credit, debt, economic cycle, in which there's a building up of debt in a cyclical way that becomes too large, and we're going to have problems. We're going to have a government debt problem. Maybe we can get into this. The second big force through time is the internal conflict force. The left and the right, differences in wealth and values causing a conflict that we're seeing it changing our political order. So the first is changing our monetary order. The second is changing our political order internally. And then the third is the great world order, how countries deal with each other. When there's a rising power, challenging the existing power. And now we are going from multilateralism, which is largely an American world order type of thing, to a unilateral world order in which there's great conflict. And the other 2 factors all through history have been acts of nature, droughts, floods, and pandemics. And number 4 is technology changing. And how they are coming together are the main forces behind this.
Energy, the seed corn of all development, all growth, all survival, energy. So energy, transportation, information, and manufacturing, these are the things that change humanity, that will change world power, and they are descending upon us in ways that are very unique. The technology is on the engineering benches today, but most Americans and most in Congress have not had time to really look deeply at what's going on here. But I've had the benefit of 33 years of studying and becoming friends with these engineers and these scientists. This technology can be built today with technology that is not developmental to deliver any human being from any place on planet Earth to any other place in less than an hour.
With technology that is not developmental to deliver any human being from any place on planet Earth to any other place in less than an hour.
To deliver Wi-Fi from space, where you never need a cell tower to connect. To deliver energy from space, where you never have to plug your phone in and it trickle charges, and you can use that energy over time. It can be applied to cars, to houses, energy.
Our passenger planes are slower than they used to be. Our trains crawl compared to those in other parts of the world. Our cars do not fly. Advances have not stopped, but something has gone wrong. Stagnation was a choice. We have weighed down our builders and innovators. The well-intentioned regulatory regime of the 1970s became an ever-tightening ratchet, first hampering America's ability to become a net energy exporter, and then making it harder and harder to build. We seem to have lost focus and vision, to have lowered our sights and let systems and structures and bureaucracies muddle us along. But we are capable of so much more. Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated.
Technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated.
Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated. cause things to grow and improve productivity.
Now to New Jersey and a mystery in the sky. It was really loud.
Magnolia resident Denise Carreco says it was enough to wake her. Neighbors were on edge.
The sky, the big bright light, and then the big bang. It was big.
There are plenty of questions right now about a mystery object that came through the ceiling of an auto repair shop in southern New Jersey. Whatever it was comes as the memory of widespread drone flights as it's fresh in many people's minds.
Questions are swirling this morning about a mystery object that crashed through the ceiling of an auto repair shop in New Jersey.
It left a hole in the roof at SNL Automotive. The shop's owner thinks the object may have come from space.
An out-of-this-world mystery in New Jersey. An unidentified object slamming into this auto repair shop in the middle of the night. The fireball tearing through the building, leaving a gaping hole in the roof, smashing into the workspace below.
Yeah, Christy, everybody's talking about this. So the owner of the automotive shop came in here. He said things felt a little bit chilly. Something didn't feel right. He walked all the way over here, and then he looked up, and you won't believe what he saw next. In the small town of Magnolia in South Jersey, there's a lot of talk about this. Around 2:30 Wednesday morning, residents were woken up by a loud boom. When Sebastian Leonardo arrived at his auto body shop in Atlantic Avenue later that morning,
That's when I look up and I saw the giant hole up there in the ceiling.
when employees climbed up to look at the damage to the roof and ceiling, they saw where the unidentified object made impact.
A sizable dent in a thick steel gauge box. Yeah, and so that's when I went to my cameras and I found all the videos and realized what had actually happened. You know, it's like a giant flash outside and then the impact in here.
Surveillance footage from cameras in and outside of SNL Automotive show the moment that something collided with the building.
You eventually see like a giant fireball come through the ceiling and then everything come flying down the roof with it.
Several doorbell cameras at homes around town captured video of the incident. Here's astronomer Derek Pitts of the Franklin Institute.
There's a bright flash, there's a boom, there's a hole, and you know, that's 3 out of 4 things. If we had one more thing, like an item that we could identify as being extraterrestrial, then we might say it's something from space.
It comes just months after hundreds of drones were spotted in the skies across New Jersey. What the heck? Sightings shutting down airports and sparking conspiracy theories. The FBI investigated but ultimately found nothing sinister. Still, the FAA is now launching a weeks-long testing program in the state aimed at improving aerial detection systems to make sure drones like these don't disrupt commercial flights in the future.
Developing right now in the Bronx, investigators are trying to figure out how a mother and an 8-year-old boy died. Their bodies were found last night in an apartment building on 231st Street between White Plains Road and Carpenter Avenue in Wakefield. News 4's Melissa Colorado joins us live from that scene now. Melissa, what have you learned?
Lorraine, I got a chance to speak to a neighbor who says she was friends with that mom, and she says that mom struggled with depression, but that neighbor also added that the mom would periodically call her and talk to her about her emotions, talk to her about her feelings. Tragically, she did not get a call this time, and now it's going to be up to the medical examiner's office to determine what caused death of this mother and her child.
Police say what started out as a wellness check in this apartment building in the Wakefield section of the Bronx yesterday evening ended with the horrifying discovery of 2 bodies, a 38-year-old mother and her 8-year-old son.
It's kind of scary. My head hurt.
Sources tell News 4 that a 4-year-old girl was found alive in the apartment and was taken to Montefiore Hospital to be evaluated. Neighbors reported hearing the little girl screaming for days.
She always outside with the child.
Siri lives next door to the apartment on East 231st Street and says the mother of 3, 2 underage kids, and an adult daughter would often confide in her.
You can see that she's going through depression.
Siri says it was well known to neighbors that the mother was struggling with her mental health and would occasionally have worrisome outbursts.
4 years ago, she was walking up and down, and one day she scared me because she said, I'm gonna... But she was cursing.
Sources say the mother's father and her adult daughter had not heard from her in days and went into the apartment to check on them. It will be up to the medical examiner to determine how long the bodies were in the apartment and their cause of death. In the meantime, Siri is wondering if a simple phone call would have prevented this.
She called me now and then and we talk. Because she always out here and she would call me, I would call her. She didn't talk to me this time. And that is the saddest part.
Many famous people and smart people and businessmen of the past have been aware of this for a long time. I like this quote from Henry Ford, for example. He said, "It's well that the people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." Henry Ford. Many people, many great leaders of the past have resisted money, have resisted the bankers. JFK trying to break America free from the Federal Reserve Bank stranglehold on the people of the United States. This is a quote 7 days from before he died. He says, "There is a plot in the country to enslave every man, woman, and child. Before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose this plot." 7 days later, he died.
Plot in the country to enslave every man, woman, and child. Before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose this plot. 7 days later, he died.
What you need to know is that JFK actually started to print what became known as the American or the United States note, which is not printed by the Federal Reserve Bank, and therefore taking the control away from the Fed. As soon as they assassinated him in Dallas in 1963, within 2 weeks or so, the Fed started to print the American money again, taking that control back.
As soon as they assassinated him in Dallas in 1963, within 2 weeks or so, the Fed started to print the American money again, taking that control back.
The FAA is doing this to ensure we can properly detect drones in our airspace and make sure they don't interfere with aircraft navigation systems.
The FAA says the work has no direct connection to the swarm of drone sightings that recently prompted national hysteria.
So that's the airplane, but look at that.
When they blanketed the skies from Maryland to New Jersey.
There's a lot of panic in the area.
Causing consternation at diners.
Do you get the impression the federal government knows way more than what they were telling people?
And frustration from lawmakers. Then, in the first days of the Trump administration, this revelation.
The drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons.
With this off-airport testing, the FAA says it's using about 100 of these off-the-shelf drones, in addition to a couple of larger drones, too. Now, it's only taking place during daylight and weekday hours, with all the communities involved being alerted. As for why the off-airport testing, the FAA says that's to make sure the drones don't impact law enforcement and medevac services. More testing will be held at sites in New Mexico, North Dakota, and Mississippi later this year.
Sightings that have been reported. At this time, we have no evidence that these activities are coming from a foreign entity or the work of an adversary. We're going to continue to monitor what is happening, but, at no point were our installations threatened.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much. We're going to take this over from now. Good evening at 5 o'clock. I'm Sade Veteran-Long.
And I'm Bill Ritter. We're taking over from David and Liz, and what an afternoon. This has been horrific and heartbreaking and so mysterious. If you're just joining us, here's the latest on that deadly helicopter crash into the Hudson River.
And we now know that all 6 people on board that helicopter, sadly, they died. And during this age, when everyone has their cameras out, we are seeing videos of the helicopter falling out of the sky. Just really a shocking and terrifying moment.
Meanwhile, divers have been going right into that water, as you heard the mayor say in New Jersey, as they search for victims, still needing to retrieve a 6th person, but there's some dispute about this. There's one report that says 6 people have now been found.
That's right, and we do know that there were 3 adults on board. One of those was the pilot and 3 children. The family are 5. They are all tourists from Spain taking this tourist helicopter flight.
Again, as you can see, just so horrific and heartbreaking and mysterious. We don't know why this vehicle went and broke apart in the Hudson. A helicopter appears to have taken off from the downtown Manhattan heliport. It happened just before 3, and according to eyewitnesses, It crashed 15 minutes later.
And we do have also in New Jersey an emotional scene today as police and military members honored Sean Johnson, the pilot killed in last week's helicopter crash in the Hudson River. News 4's Gus Rosendale has a look at the escort for Johnson and the latest on that crash investigation.
Sean Johnson's long journey home began today at the medical examiner's office in Newark. 36-year-old Navy veteran's remains were taken from there and brought by police and military escort to the Greenville Memorial Home on Danforth Avenue in Jersey City late this afternoon. The husband and father remembered as a good man and a good helicopter pilot who had always dreamed of being behind the controls of an aircraft.
There was no way that this crash was a result of Sean doing something wrong.
There was no way that this crash was a result of Sean doing something wrong.
Johnson and a family of 5 visiting from Spain died when the chopper they were in fell apart and crashed into the Hudson last Thursday near the New Jersey waterfront. Aviation experts widely agree there was nothing that could have been done by the pilot to save the doomed aircraft given the nature of the catastrophe. In recent days, key pieces of evidence have been brought up from the Hudson, including the chopper's main rotor. The tour company that operated the helicopter has since been shut down as the investigation into what happened gets underway.
The tour company that operated the helicopter has since been shut down as the investigation into what happened gets underway.
The NTSB said recovery efforts concluded Monday, but the mourning is just getting started. Johnson's originally from Chicago, and his body will be brought there in the coming days for a family funeral. A man who died doing what he loved.
I don't know what to make of it. In 31 plus years of this job, this ranks up there with one of the crazier ones I've heard.
And we begin with breaking news out of the west side of Detroit, where 5 family members have been sent to the hospital, all of them with gunshot wounds. Detroit police say there was a fight between family members and then things escalated into a full-on shootout. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Hillary Goulston.
And I'm Dave Spencer. We are learning more now about the conditions of those multiple victims. Fox 2's Camille Mary joins us live from the scene. Camille, so much to unpack here. Where to start?
Yeah, 2 people, though, are critical condition and 3 in serious. But let's talk about what happened. Let's rewind the clock back to yesterday, and that's what led up to all this. Is a family member died after a long-term illness. She was an elderly woman. And then today, all the family members were together trying to discuss logistics after a passing, what to do as far as funeral arrangements go, where to have the body taken, when all of a sudden chaos broke out. A physical altercation, then a shooting. We know right now, as I said at the top, that 2 brothers in their 50s in critical condition, and then 3 women who are also family members. One of them, the wife of one of the brothers, and then also a niece who was in her 20s, also in the hospital. Now, the Assistant Chief Fitzgerald talks about this way better than I can, so I want you to listen to what he has to say in his own words.
Sounds like it started with the 2 brothers in a physical altercation. Gun falls out of the one brother's waistband. Another brother picks it up, fires a shot. Others return fire to defend that person. And even when the original officers, the responding officers arrived at the scene, they were still fighting on the front lawn. One of the family members had a broom, hit another family member with the broom.
Okay, so right now we know that there was also a person who was inside the house. This all happened outside, but who was inside the house, who was suffering from a stroke, who is recovering from that. Police worried that he could have maybe been hit in this, but he's okay. And then also a bullet hit another house. Luckily, no one was hit. Right now, it's kind of a hectic situation because someone walked up. He actually walked up to us first and then to police because he's trying to get to his house back there. He's screaming at police. Police are trying to get him to calm down. He doesn't appear to be related to all of this, but still kind of adding to the stress and the chaos of this scene. But for now, that's what's going on. Of course, we're going to stay on top of this and bring you the latest information as soon as we get it.
Many people are shocked when they find out that every country in the world is registered as a corporation. It's not just countries. It's states, provinces, cities, Everything imaginable. The roads that we drive on are registered as corporations. Everything in our lives has been incorporated around us while we carry on and distracted by computer games and the news and who's screwing who and who won what game and what final is being played. While we're being distracted by the entertainment and the programming on our televisions, our world around us has been stolen from us and incorporated. And this is how, through the legal system and the corporations that have more rights than living, breathing human beings, we, the people, have become slaves to the corporations every step of the way.
To that deadly shooting at Florida State University, a community reeling and trying to heal after a gunman opened fire, killing 2 and injuring 6 others, gathering at a vigil to honor the lives lost. And tonight, new details coming in about the suspect. ABC's Faith Abube reports from Tallahassee.
Tonight, as the Florida State University community recovers following these traumatic scenes on campus, questions swirling about a motive of the suspected shooter's past. Police say suspect Phoenix Eichner was on a shooting rampage Thursday, leaving 6 people injured. 2 others, Robert Morales and Tiru Shaba, dead. The suspect awaiting charges, as court records from 2015 reveal he had been on medication for several health and mental issues, including growth hormone disorder and ADHD. The details laid out in a years-long custody battle between his biological parents. The affidavit alleging his mother took him out of school to Norway for over 3 months.
I was his teacher the year he got abducted. When he came back to my classroom.
Gina Davidson sharing these classroom photos. The young suspect on the right. She tells us her heart breaks for the victims and the, quote, fragile boy turned accused shooter.
I look back and think, well, what more could I have done? I'm sure everybody who's been associated in his life thinks the same thing.
Tonight, the surviving victims making strides in their recovery.
That's good.
Madison Askins, who just yesterday could not walk without getting sick, today making a lap around the ICU. The bullet still lodged in her vertebrae.
I'm not going to backtrack. I'm not going to let it tear me down.
And Whit, Madison is determined to show up for an internship she has lined up for the summer. She says nothing will stop her. As for the university, officials announced today that classes will resume on Monday.
The shooter is 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner. And he's a son of a Leon County Sheriff deputy.
Deputy.
Deputy Eichner has been with the Leon County Sheriff's Office for over 18 years. She has a tremendous job that she's done. Her service to this community has been exceptional. Unfortunately, her son had access to one of her weapons, and that was one of the weapons that was found at the scene. And we are continuing that investigation into how that weapon was used and what other weapons perhaps he may have had access to. We will make sure that we do everything we can to prosecute and make sure that we send a message to folks that this will never be tolerated here in Leon County, and I dare say across the state and across this nation.
Good morning, Gina. Yeah, there were 2 people killed in this shooting. Neither of them were students, but we also know there were 6 others injured. We're still working to learn more about who those people were. And that list does not include the shooter, the alleged gunman, who was also injured in all of this. He was shot by police as they were trying to take him in, trying to stop this tragedy. This is something that is going to be rocking this community for quite some time. We were able to take a peek inside the student union last night. That's where the shooting happened, and you can see just how quickly people headed out of here. They left all of their belongings behind, so we could still see laptops and iPads open and on tables as though people left while they were still in use. We saw water bottles and backpacks and handbags, and then outside there were several cases where people had left in such a rush that they lost their shoes. So we saw a sneaker, we saw several flats outside this morning, and that is something that is just one of those things that kind of shakes you. We were also able to talk with some students who were here as the shooting was happening. They were inside the student union. Some of them said they ran away, some said they barricaded themselves inside. Here's what they told us.
Probably more ambulances than I've ever seen in my life. It was like a war zone around here.
Personally, it's shock. Like, I don't think the magnitude of it has set in yet.
And this happened also with Abraham Lincoln, who 100 years before that started to print the greenback in the United States, making the American people free of all debt. And the greenback was printed by the government, didn't belong to the Federal Bank or the Rothschild Empire. This was obviously not liked, and they lost control. This is why they shot him and got rid of him, because he didn't play their game. Who controls our governments? Who controls the bankers? Who controls what's going on here? Many people around the world call these the puppet masters. We don't know who they are because they don't want us to know who they are. Quote from Mayor Amschel Rothschild, the founding father of the Rothschild Empire in the 1700s. He says, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." And that's exactly what has become of the world and our countries. Because through the banking institutions, they control everything. Think about how money and the bankers control all the education systems, the research laboratories, how they control industry, the large corporations. Everything imaginable ultimately goes back to those who control the money. Follow the money and you'll see the root of evil and the root of control as it unfolds around us. Who controls the corporations? Once again, follow the money. Always leads back to the Rothschilds' banking empire. But unfortunately, in our legal systems, corporations have more rights than living, breathing human beings. Think about that. This is unimaginable that something like this could even happen.
Corporations have more rights than living, breathing human beings. Think about that. Corporations have more rights than living, breathing human beings. Think about that.
A spring storm dropped a few inches of snow in coastal Searsport. And right next to the Mount Hope Cemetery, where many have chosen their final resting place, there's a new place, the Maine Coast Crematory. Here they perform the traditional cremation by fire. But in the back corner, an unusual piece of equipment resembles a rocket.
We are the only low-pressure, low-heat, alkaline hydrolysis unit operating in the country.
Mark Raposta has been in the cremation business for decades and is just now using this new method of liquefying human remains as an alternative to the traditional cremation. This $250,000 machine works a lot like a household appliance, using water, sodium hydroxide, and potassium hydroxide.
Think of a dishwasher, okay? Because the dishes stay in place in the dishwasher. They're not moved around. The dishwasher, the water cycles around. Water cycles around the deceased human remains for about 12 hours. At the end of that 12-hour cycle, the automation takes it out through the wastewater treatment system. We pull that tray back out again. We take out human bones.
And in 12 hours, what's left over is almost exactly the same as what's left after a flame cremation. It resembles beach sand. They consider it a green cremation, more environmentally friendly, and that's why Riposta thinks it'll be well received here in Maine. Dangerous emissions not being released into the air through these chimney stacks. The waste from this new method goes through the pipes that lead out of the building, much like the sewer pipes in our homes.
When you flush your toilet, does that go into a public water? Or when you put water down the sink, does that go into a public? No, it goes to a wastewater treatment system. The two systems are completely separated.
What if I told you there were liquefied bodies in the Chicago water supply? The city of Chicago, which was incorporated in 1837, needed a cemetery, so a small area just outside the city limits was designated as the burial ground. In 1843, this area was named Cemetery Park until 1860 when it was renamed Lake Park. It was finally renamed to Lincoln Park in 1865 to memorialize Abraham Lincoln, who had just been assassinated. Cemetery Park was split into 4 separate burial areas, including a general cemetery, a Catholic cemetery, a Jewish cemetery, and a pottery. These were the only cemeteries in Chicago until the establishment of the Rose Hill in 1859. Now here's where it starts to get interesting. Throughout the 1850s, leading health expert Dr. John H. Rausch petitioned to move the bodies from these cemeteries to other cemeteries because the liquids from the decomposing bodies were seeping into the city's water supply. Ugh. The process of removing the bodies started but was put on hold due to the Civil War. This process commenced after the war, but it was again halted thanks to the Chicago fire in 1871. Most of the remaining burial markers were destroyed in the fire, so locating the remaining bodies was almost impossible. After the fire, this area was reimagined as a park and the remaining bodies were more or less forgotten.
What we're going to see happening in the end times is a building of a confederation of 10 nations. And I don't know which body or entity, or if it's going to be something we don't even see now that will be the ultimate expression of it. But probably it'll be the 10 most economically, politically, and militarily powerful nations on the earth. And it's interesting because so much of the endeavors of the last administration, I would say, in fact, maybe 3 or 4 of the last administrations that have run our country, has been designed to diminish the United States' role in the world so that we would be on a par with all of the other great nations. That the idea of the economic and political and military hegemony which the United States has, which causes many to call us an empire, is basically they see that's the problem. That has to be removed, and what we need to do is create this confederacy. In fact, the World Economic Forum and the UN both have agreed we need to have 10 nations that will lead us in a confederacy to bring us into a world peace.